New season of A Survival in the Wild is out with a man and woman braving the wilderness. The woman is risking her life to catch fish and show off her skills to help her partner. This season's challenge is set in Mexico's arid wilderness, where the Pacific Ocean meets steep cliffs and dense jungles. They'll have to deal with swarms of mosquitoes and pray they don't run into a jaguar. John, the male lead, loves the 21 Days Primitive Survival Show. He's a bank employee who unwinds by watching survival shows daily and has even tried his hand at living in the wild. He figured it would be a blast and a great way to unwind in nature. Molly, on the other hand, is an ICU doctor. She is currently 35, divorced, and raising 4 kids. She looks quite striking and joined the show mainly to attract potential suitors. She's on the lookout for a great dad for her kids. As fans, they just need to last 14 days to win the challenge. They'll get a $100,000 reward. For John, it's like winning the lottery. He gets to chill with a woman and make money. I find Molly a bit puzzling. She goes topless but still wears leggings. Isn't she treating us like strangers? Molly's really anxious about the wild, scared centipedes might crawl into her clothes.
Centipede in my vagina.
See another naked person! Can we hug?
Absolutely.
Ready to get started?
I was born ready out here. She's determined to be out here if we're gonna be awesome partners.
When they met, they were surprisingly enthusiastic and not awkward. Molly had a machete, and John brought a hand shovel. The show gave them a lighter and a metal pot. They have to trek 5 kilometers to survive, and they're both feeling pretty confident. After preparing everything, they set off. They have to hike through dense vegetation and rugged rocky terrain under the scorching sun. They must reach a water source quickly, or they might suffer from dehydration. They chatted as they walked. After getting to know each other, Molly thought John was great and hoped he could become a father figure for her kids. John told her he was there to prove himself, not to be a father figure. After 3 hours, they emerged from the dense vegetation. Their pace was very slow, and Molly was already sunburned and feeling very thirsty. Luckily, they spotted a river, which got them really excited. Molly loved the spot and thought they could fish there. He felt the resources there could meet all his survival needs. Conveniently, there was a large cave nearby, which was a natural shelter. But there were footprints above, which John guessed might belong to large cats, like ocelots or Mexican bobcats. They usually hide in caves to escape the heat. They continued searching nearby and found another cave. This cave had no animal tracks and was perfect for them to live in. Molly also thought it was suitable. After some discussion, they chose to make the cave their home and cleaned it up, saving time on building a shelter. The 3 survival essentials. The first thing is to make a fire. With fire, they can boil water and cook food. Thanks to the fire starter, they quickly got a fire going. Molly was so excited she almost wanted to give John a horse ride as a reward. With fire, they could boil water. Suddenly, they had shelter, water, and fire. Molly thought the challenge was a breeze. She believed the $100,000 prize was almost theirs. Wild water needs boiling to kill bacteria. Drinking unboiled water can cause infections. They let the boiled water cool and were eager to drink it. After hours of walking, they were parched. John went to find firewood, while Molly found a crayfish by the river. Seeing protein right at their feet made Molly's mouth water. She snatched a stick and went for it. Her delicate look is deceiving. She's relentless when it comes to tasks. By the time John showed up, the crayfish had already escaped. Molly boldly declared, saying she'd cook it next time she saw it. By 4 p.m., Molly decided to tidy up the shelter and improve their sleeping area. John gathered hay from the area, while Molly smoothed the cave floor and spread the hay to make a mattress. This was their first night. With fire, water, and shelter, they were doing quite well. If they could hunt some food, it would be perfect. That night, they slept next to each other. The next day, they woke up early, saying they couldn't sleep at all the previous night. They woke up every few minutes, and John couldn't sleep because of bug bites. Today, Molly planned to hunt for frogs, or some tiny river shrimp. The stream was full of tadpoles, but no frogs. John was tasked with finding river shrimp. Although there were many fish in the river, they couldn't catch any. Hunting for food in the river was harder than he thought. Even with river shrimp, they couldn't catch them. In the end, they came back empty-handed. Molly lay on a rock observing and saw a crab in the water. She waded in, ready to dive for the crab, but slipped and fell, legs flailing in the air. A crab almost drowned him, and in the end, he only managed to catch 1 claw. Does that count as a successful hunt? Even though it wasn't much protein, it boosted his confidence. A whole pot of water for 1 tiny crab claw. They were thrilled and eagerly anticipated this hard-earned protein. Their enthusiasm deeply moved John. Soon, the crab soup was ready. They shared 1 crab claw between the 2 of them and savored every bite. That night, they discussed their plans for the next few days. Overall, they felt very confident about the upcoming challenges. It was now the 3rd day. John woke up and began gathering firewood. They needed plenty to keep the fire burning through the night, which had kept them cozy before. Today, they chose to stockpile all the firewood. They knew they needed enough to stay warm through the night. Luckily, there was plenty of wood nearby, and they could easily gather a lot. While collecting wood, John spotted a frog. If they could catch it, they would have a feast today. John swung a shovel and nabbed the frog, making Molly jump with excitement. They had caught their first frog. This made them feel more like survivalists. The frog, weighing a few pounds, was enough for a hearty meal. John was very pleased with this. They roasted the frog meat directly over the fire, even without any seasoning. The aroma of the meat was already mouth-watering. They couldn't wait to taste it, and it tasted like chicken. Just like how foreigners always say everything tastes like chicken. Even though there wasn't a lot of frog meat, it was their first real catch. This sparked a survival instinct in them. When that instinct grows, it will drive them to explore. For now, all they had to do was find food daily, and life was pretty easy. The first 3 days had been a breeze. Molly thought they were nearing victory. I still couldn't believe how relaxed they were. It was already day 4. Today, John aimed to make a trap for small fish and shrimp in the river. Crafting the trap was straightforward. After building the frame, they just had to fill in the gaps. Molly was flattening reed stalks to make weaving more efficient. She couldn't wait to eat something. Even before the fish trap was done, they were already worrying about catching too many fish. Total rookie move. They hadn't yet faced the wild's harsh reality. Soon, they had a conical fish trap with an entrance at the top. Once the fish swam in, hopefully, it will work. They used a rotten coconut as bait, which was too spoiled to eat anyway. John set the fish trap in the water. Since it was their first time using one, they were excited for a big catch. By the 5th day, they woke up not wanting to get out of bed, probably feeling the hunger and exhaustion setting in. After rising, John rushed to the fish trap, only to find it empty, dashing their hopes for a big breakfast. John decided to move the fish trap to a different spot, hoping for better luck. By the 7th day, Molly went west to look for food. She hadn't eaten in days and was both hungry and tired. The fish were too fast to catch. John found a frog in the same spot, but luck wasn't on their side this time. On the 8th day, John checked the fish trap again, each time with high hopes. He emptied the trap, but once again, it was empty. Their confidence was waning, and they weren't as enthusiastic as before. I guess they were entering starvation mode. John told Molly that. He used to enjoy shouting advice at the TV, but now that he's in their shoes, he sees how hard it really is. By the 9th day, John had to spend time every day looking for wood, facing the problem of food shortage. He wasn't sleeping well at night, so he had no energy for work. He tried going out to find food but tripped on the way. Now he was beginning to wonder if he could last. Molly was also exhausted and hungry, pushing through on sheer willpower. She used to be a cheerful and lively woman, but now she looked worried. Even breathing felt like a workout. She felt very uncomfortable. If Molly lay down, John would have to do all the work. Molly was now drinking water to stave off hunger, but in this state, it was tough to see them making it 14 days. Watching her teammates struggle, she knew food was a must. By day 10, finding food was their top priority. John checked the traps daily, but results were uncertain. This time, they finally caught some river shrimp, 2 of them. It took them days to catch just 2 shrimp, far from the bounty they had imagined. Once cooked, they eagerly devoured the shrimp. Molly thought it was the best protein ever. After 10 days of hunger, how could it not be? After eating, Molly felt a sudden burst of energy. Having food in her stomach was amazing. But by day 12, even though the shrimp was tasty, it just wasn't enough. John went looking for wild fruits by the river, but came up empty after hours. Then he saw a lizard. But catching it at the hole's entrance was tough. John waited patiently, then with a few swift moves, he snagged the lizard, unsure if it was poisonous, but decided to eat it anyway. John took it back to the shelter. Molly, nearly collapsing, perked up instantly. Each successful hunt thrilled them. The lizard was the biggest catch John had made, giving them more meat. They cooked it over the fire. Wouldn't soup be a better idea? It might taste even better. But soon, they were enjoying the roasted meat. While John was gathering firewood, Molly accidentally drank a sip of unboiled river water. Both of them were stunned. They hoped she wouldn't fall ill. Even a small sip could cause diarrhea or other issues if she got infected. They just hoped she would be okay. By the 13th day, they were very excited because tomorrow was the evacuation day. Luckily, the river water didn't bother Molly. John checked the traps but came up empty. So, he ditched the fish trap and took it back to the shelter. They chose to do nothing today. They wanted to save their energy for the evacuation. On the 14th day, they checked the map. They needed to hike 5 kilometers to the evacuation point. Once ready, they followed the river and, a few hours later, they successfully reached the evacuation point. After surviving for 14 days, they earned the $100,000 reward. Where will they challenge themselves next? Can't wait for the next episode. If you stumble upon a fish in the African desert, use it as bait to catch a bigger one. Skewer and roast it over a fire. The juicy meat will be a vital protein source for your survival. The latest season of Survival in the Wild features a man and a woman trying to last 14 days in the South African savannah. This area, over 1,500 meters above sea level, is hot and arid but full of protein sources. If you're skilled, eating grilled meat daily isn't just a dream. This season's male contestant is Chev, a fan of primitive survival for 21 days. Watching survival shows is usually thrilling, so Elsa, a 31-year-old divorcee with 5 kids and a white-collar job in the city, decided to sign up for the experience. She loves watching these shows at home and never imagined she'd be part of one. To attract fans, the show only requires contestants to survive for 14 days to win $100,000. On her way there, Elsa saw rhinos and thought they were cute, not realizing how aggressive and dangerous they are, just like leopards and wild buffalo. But as long as you have the strength, these can be eaten casually. The two of them, who are used to living in the city, love the exciting survival experience here. I am so excited to get naked *** is their favorite thing to do. Elsa Todd didn't hesitate. There were so many stones on the desert that he had to be careful every step of the way, and Chev couldn't wait to see his female companion.
Finally meet you.
Me too.
Yeah!
I'm
Looking forward to bringing in a lot of the opposite environments. Both of them live in New York and plan to use their urban smarts to conquer this place. Looking at this, let's pause for a moment. They think they have some street smarts and can use these skills to survive here. By street smarts, they mean the experience of being beggars, using dumpster diving as a way to survive in the wild. Chev also has personal outdoor experience. He's an outdoor enthusiast and is very confident about this desert survival challenge. However, Elsa's strength might just be having a great attitude, which is code for, I'll try not to curse. Elsa is an artistic young woman, and that's her on the horse. She also enjoys outdoor life, occasionally coming to the beach to eat sashimi when she works on the island, and she loves meditating. Not sure if anyone has videos of her on their phones. They both admire each other and hope to surprise us with their survival skills. Elsa brought fishing gear, Chev brought a machete, and the show provided a fire starter and a pot. They need to hike 7 kilometers to reach the water source, and the terrain is It's extremely steep, and they have to be cautious of wild animal attacks. Hiking such a long distance in the desert is definitely tough. After getting ready, they set off. The ground was uneven and full of rocks, so they moved very slowly. At this pace, it would take over 5 hours to reach their destination. The ground was covered with rocks, and one wrong step could injure their feet. Besides the rocks, there were also many thorns, pricking their feet every 10 steps. Walking in such an environment was already a challenge, let alone surviving well. The climate here was scorching hot, and it was noon. They felt like the air itself was on fire. Chev, having grown up in Jamaica, was used to running barefoot on asphalt, so these paths didn't bother him much. But Elsa was different. As a city girl, she wasn't used to this terrain and had already stepped on many thorns. They hadn't even reached their destination, and she was already in tears. What happened to using street smarts to conquer this place? After walking for 4 hours straight, Elsa was on the verge of a breakdown. The confidence she had at the start was now completely shattered. Chev gathered some dry grass and asked Elsa to use the fishing line to make shoes. After just 4 hours, he already felt out of place, admitting he's a city person and not cut out for the wilderness. Chev made grass shoes for her, which made walking easier. He dragged Elsa along from around 9 in the morning until after 4 in the afternoon, when they finally found fresh water. Elsa was so thirsty she felt brain dead and immediately jumped into the river to bathe, thinking the water tasted better than New York tap water. With the sun about to set, their top priority was clear. They needed to find a good spot and build a shelter. The trees formed a natural barrier, so they planned to weave thorny branches between them to keep animals out. Chev took on the shelter building, while Elsa was in charge of starting a fire. Chev chopped down thorny branches, which had sharp thorns that could pierce both animals and feet. Elsa used a bird's nest as kindling, but Chev had to help her get the fire going. Luckily, they succeeded and even managed to boil some water. Meanwhile, Elsa used a rock as an improvised undergarment, and soon the water was ready. Elsa thought the water tasted fine, but Chev disagreed, saying it tasted awful, like sulfur.
right?
They spent their
Tastes like
first night in the
sulfur.
thorny shelter. Elsa was very appreciative of everything Chev had done that day, though it was clear Chev was just going through the motions in their interactions. The next morning, Chev was already planning to rebuild the shelter. He didn't expect much help from Elsa. As long as she wasn't a burden, that was good enough for him. Chev planned to build a rainproof shelter in the economic zone, hoping for better sleep at night. Meanwhile, Elsa was by the river indulging in a beauty treatment. The riverbed mud, rich in minerals and antioxidants, was great for her skin and free to use. While Elsa enjoyed herself, Chev was dog-tired. One was surviving, the other was on vacation.
What's going on over there? I am a one-man show.
After her little episode, Elsa lies down to rest because the sun is shining on her. She needs to rest for 20 minutes and doesn't help Chev at all. Chev isn't angry. He realizes this is his survival challenge, and Elsa is just a parasite here to share the prize money. It's like Chev does all the work, and Elsa just reaps the benefits. Around 11 a.m., Elsa finally gets up to drink water, while Chev has only managed to set up the framework of the shelter. The midday heat is unbearable, so Chev has to find another place to rest. Elsa strolled over, claiming she was trying to figure out how to conserve energy. Even a crocodile would be scared hearing that. Chev mentioned that if they finished the shelter, they could escape the sun. Elsa didn't respond, fearing Chev would make her work. She then said she felt dizzy, and Chev assumed it was from hunger. He decided to find some scorpions for her to eat. However, he didn't find anything and ended up getting his foot pricked by thorns. Chev rummaged through the rocks on the ground, searching for scorpions. Fortunately, he finally found one and excitedly shouted, placing it on the charcoal to roast. This was their first successful hunt. Though the protein wasn't much, it was still something to celebrate. The scorpion was split in half and tasted like crayfish, quite delicious. On the third day, around 6 in the morning, Chev got up to prepare for fishing. He found a dead fish and planned to use it as bait. Elsa helped organize the fishing hooks. The midday sun was brutal, leaving their skin sunburned. They aimed to work more in the cooler mornings. Elsa, once fresh and pretty, was now unrecognizable, while Chev looked the same. They set up fishing gear by the river, and Chev worked on the shelter, adding leaves to the roof for rain protection. Elsa argued it only rains for 30 minutes and wished Chev would focus on the bed instead. Chev disagreed. At night, they took turns watching the fire, their only warmth. By the fourth day, the weather suddenly changed, and Elsa was shivering from the cold. Now she was both cold and hungry, and a strong wind started to blow, signaling rain. Chev went to the shore to check the traps. The bait was eaten, but they hadn't caught any fish. All 3 hooks were empty, leaving them without food. How would they make it to the 14th day? On the 5th day, Chev went back to the shore early in the morning to fish. Elsa was severely sunburned and couldn't be relied upon. Chev hoped Elsa wouldn't hold them back. He set up the fishing lines by the shore, hoping to catch something. At night, Elsa couldn't sleep because of the cold. She felt like she was sitting on ice, shivering uncontrollably. That's the savannah for you, either you freeze or you roast. Chev was doing relatively okay, but she also felt the chill. By the 6th day, after a sleepless night due to the cold, Elsa went to the shore early in the morning to fetch water and gather firewood. They now relied on the fire to keep warm. Luckily, they caught a big fish today, which gave Chev a huge boost of confidence. The fish was enormous, enough to stuff them for a meal. It was an African fish, and eating it made them feel like true survivors. Chev skewered the fish on a stick and roasted it to perfection, tender and flavorful. He didn't mind the heat, but compared to Elsa, he was as dark as charcoal. The fish was delicious, and Chev ate until he was full. No one would rescue Elsa tonight, no matter how much she screamed. The fish boosted their morale significantly. Even if they went hungry for the next 10 days, they felt confident about making it to the 14th day. Elsa even licked the fish bones clean. On the 7th day, Elsa gathered firewood while Chev was in pain from being poked by Elsa's stick all night. On the 7th day, Elsa was out gathering firewood while Chev was in pain from being poked by her stick all night. The memory of it was unbearable. Chev had also stepped on a thorn while fishing and needed a doctor. His feet were cracked and painful from the dry land, intense sun, and wind. After treatment, the doctor left. With Chev limping, Elsa took on more tasks but struggled to start a fire. How could she handle more work? Chev watched Elsa struggle to start a fire. Should I tell her that my hands still work even if my foot is injured? When Elsa couldn't get the fire going, Chev started giving her instructions, which sparked an argument. Clearly, Chev has a temper too. He was livid watching Elsa struggle with such a basic survival skill, his face darkening with anger. His frustration wasn't just about the fire, it likely stemmed from Elsa poking him with a stick last night and now injuring her foot today. What a streak of bad luck. But Elsa couldn't really say much, given her failure to start the fire and her aggressive behavior last night. Chev gathered bird nests to make a fire starter, making things quite awkward. By the 8th day, Elsa had to fetch water daily. With nothing to eat, they could only drink water, and their shelter was practically useless. Every night, Elsa shivered from the cold. They lit 2 fires for warmth, but they didn't help much. By the 9th day, Chev's foot hadn't improved, and the pain was unbearable. The dryness here was too much for anyone not used to it. Chev told Elsa that his foot hurt too much to walk, and he wanted to quit the challenge. But Elsa suggested staying one more night. Chev was very grateful for Elsa's effort, so he decided to stay another night to see how things went. On the 10th day, the wind was very strong, and Elsa took on all the work, which wasn't much, just fetching water daily. Chev couldn't move around easily, so he stayed in the shelter. They decided to lie down and starve, not hunting or doing any work. The sky changed dramatically, and it looked like a heavy rain was coming, and by midnight, it started pouring. Unsurprisingly, Elsa was the first to cry. It was destined to be a sleepless night. The rain slowly drenched their fire, and they braved the cold to keep it going. By the 11th day, last night had been their most miserable. Now, without a fire, they couldn't go on. Both decided to quit the challenge. This ending was unexpected, given their initial confidence and talk of using city smarts to conquer the wild. Who knew it would turn out so badly? What surprises will the next contestants bring us? Can't wait for the next episode's update. This is the most entertaining deserted island survival I've ever witnessed. A man and a woman land on the island and, on day 1, enjoy grilled lizard. By day 2, they're catching seafood and relishing fish stew. It's like they've turned a survival challenge into a vacation. This episode unfolds on Tobago, a deserted island with dense jungle and a volcanic rocky coastline. Along with venomous centipedes and scorpions, there are blood-sucking zombie mosquitoes serenading you nightly. The female lead, Sarah, is a divorce expert, having been divorced 4 times by 31. She was thrilled from the moment she arrived. Sarah is absolutely thrilled. She adores the outdoors and frequently indulges in buffet meals, making her a wilderness survival enthusiast. As an acrobat, her specialty is spinning in circles, which is also how she spun her first 4 husbands out of her life. Frank, the male lead, is a 41-year-old bachelor, still a virgin. He's an expert hunter who rarely buys meat, preferring to forage. It's uncertain if he'll find such easy pickings on the island. Near the shore, there was a raft not far away. The show insisted they take the raft to the island. They started stripping off their clothes without much hesitation, considering the $100,000 prize at stake. Wearing too much would be a bit embarrassing. It was just a few meters, but Sarah took over 10 minutes to paddle, which was an insult to her swimming skills. She even had to jump into the water when they were almost ashore for such a short distance. I suspect he's a bit off, laughing discreetly when he first met his partner. After meeting, they got to know each other without showing much awkwardness. Facing Frank, a virgin, Sarah couldn't stop laughing, not expecting to take someone's first time here. Sarah brought a machete, Frank brought a lot of ropes, and the show provided a fire starter and an iron pot. It was a mistake not to bring a fishhook for survival on a deserted island. They had to hike 5 kilometers to their destination. They walked along the coast into the jungle, which had cute crocodiles and mischievous little pythons. It's the rainy season now, so they'll face heavy downpours. They followed a creek deeper into the jungle. The path was relatively easy to walk, and they didn't have to worry about getting sunstroke, but it was incredibly muggy. Sarah felt things crawling all over her. The place was swarming with flies. They kept chasing Franks but biting for an hour. They found a lot of bamboo here, which is very useful for making traps and building shelters. Sarah decides this is the perfect spot for a shelter. They plan quickly and get to work without delay. Sarah cuts bamboo while Frank handles construction. They set up the shelter's framework with a few hours left before nightfall. Sarah starts a fire, knowing the mosquitoes might carry them off to sea without it. Once the fire is going, they feel more confident and boil water to drink. They use banana leaves for the roof to stay warm at night. Oddly, they built the fire under the bed in their shelter. It turned out they built a dual-purpose shelter with a fire pit in the middle and beds on either side. Sarah was very pleased with the shelter. She lay on the bamboo bed, dreaming about how to spend the $100,000 prize after the competition. She planned to marry another husband. With some time to spare, they decided to explore the nearby area. Sarah spotted a huge lizard. If they could catch it, it would make a great meal. Frank got ready to ambush the giant lizard from behind, while Sarah kept giving directions. They finally caught it. Sarah, impressed by Frank's fierceness, decided she wanted to marry him, even if it meant a $100,000 dowry. Frank almost let the lizard escape while playing with it, and if it had, Sarah might have swallowed him whole out of frustration. By 7 in the evening, they were roasting the lizard on a stick. The aroma of grilled meat filled the wilderness, and Sarah couldn't wait to taste it. Just a few hours on the island and they were already eating barbecue and had built a shelter. This wasn't just a good start, it was like they had cheat codes. Although there wasn't a lot of meat, it was enough to fill them up. Sarah, who could eat 10 of these, would give even crocodiles nightmares. Bats were already out hunting and it would soon be dark. Around 9 in the evening, the two of them lay in the shelter to rest. The open shelter didn't keep out mosquitoes, and Frank constantly felt something crawling on his hands. His feet had been bitten thousands of times. The mosquitoes here not only sucked blood but were also very curious. Sarah was covered in mosquito bites and joked that Frank wasn't even as brave as a mosquito. The next day, they decided to go fishing. Frank brought a net, hoping to secure their food supply. The trek to the shore was long, requiring a significant walk each time. Once there, Sarah gathered wood while Frank cast the net. Surprisingly, he caught a fish on his first try. Though small, it was an easy catch. He strung it on a branch, and Sarah noticed plenty of dry wood around. He gathered some wood to bring back to the shelter, making the most of their time by both fishing and collecting firewood. Frank's second cast caught 2 small fish, and Sarah was so excited she could almost fly. On a deserted island, catching fish meant basic survival was no longer an issue. They had a good haul today, catching some fish and returning to the shelter to make fish soup. It wasn't a gourmet meal, but at least they could eat meat every day, unlike other contestants who just lay around hungry, hoping to win the prize. They added some wild vegetable leaves to the soup, balancing their diet and preventing constipation. They even managed to get some coconuts, making it almost like a wilderness diet plan. Sarah was very pleased with Frank's performance and decided to reward him tonight. Nights were terrifying because of the swarms of mosquitoes. They couldn't sleep in the shelter, so they spread some wood ash around, hoping it would repel the insects. By 3 a.m., they were still pacing around the shelter, unable to sleep due to the relentless mosquito bites. The small fire in the shelter wasn't enough to keep the mosquitoes away. In fact, it attracted them. They spent the morning cleaning their bedding, having spread charcoal ash on it the night before. The ash from the bamboo made their bodies itch terribly, making last night their most uncomfortable one yet. However, this didn't stop Sarah from doing her morning exercises. She went to the creek and smeared mud all over herself. Sarah wove a fish trap to catch crayfish, which Frank found insulting. He had a fishing net that could catch fish, but Sarah insisted on making a fish trap, and it was so small that it was unlikely to catch any crayfish. Frank also started making traps. He found some crab holes in the mountains. These mountain crabs were very nutritious, so he prepared bamboo tubes to catch them. He set up a device to catch crabs. I have to say, these two have some interesting ideas. Isn't catching fish more straightforward? Maybe they're just making a statement. Frank soon finished his crab trap, and Sarah completed her fish trap, though its opening was too large to hold crayfish. Frank found fresh soil, likely from mountain crabs, and placed his trap there for better chances. Sarah put her fish trap in the creek, hoping to catch shrimp. Soon, it started pouring rain, and their shelter, made with banana leaves, couldn't withstand the heavy downpour. Their shelter had a roof made of banana leaves, which offered some rain protection but couldn't handle the heavy downpour. They huddled by the fire to keep it going. When it wasn't raining, mosquitoes feasted on them. When it rained, they got soaked. By the 4th day, another grueling night had passed. Sarah looked exhausted, but still did her morning exercises. I have to give her credit. She sticks to her routine no matter what. Sarah checked the fish trap in the creek. In such a small stream, would it even work? She found it empty. Frank also went to check the traps he set yesterday. Instead of using a net to catch fish, he insisted on walking all this way to catch a crab. When he got closer, he saw the trap had been triggered, but who knows if anything was inside. With such large openings on both sides, even if he caught a big shark, it would escape. He decided to reset the trap and try again. Honestly, even if he set this trap 1,000 times, the crabs would still escape. Seeing his determined look, I knew this guy was no ordinary person. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep again, not even for a minute. Nothing worked. Exhausted, he lay down on the ground to rest for a while. On the 6th day, Sarah had slept for about an hour the previous night. Sleeping here left her with a sore back, and she couldn't sleep at night. I doubt she can make it to the 14th day. Gradually, she felt like she was breaking down. By the 8th day, Sarah still did her morning exercises every day. With so many mosquitoes at night, she couldn't sleep, so she rested for a few hours during the day. She took some leaves to the stream, planning to rest in the water. Isn't she afraid of eels burrowing into holes? Frank was very worried about Sarah Sarah's health. He wants Sarah to be more comfortable, so he picked some leaves and gathered some stones, placing them on her back. What is he doing? Is her back hurting? Maybe she's been tossing and turning too much at night. Frank's thoughtfulness really touched Sarah. Such a considerate guy must be a treasure. She should definitely marry him. If it were me, I would have gone to the beach to catch fish long ago. It's now the 10th day, and time is flying by. Frank checks the traps every day, but they always get triggered without catching anything. He can't figure out why. Every time he checked and reset the traps, didn't he think to see if the bamboo tubes were the problem? There were plenty of small birds around, so he decided to make a trap to hunt them. Frank chose a large stone and cut a branch, using the branch as a support to prop up the stone. As soon as a bird touched the trigger, the stone would fall and crush it. Frank was handy but not very bright. On the 11th day, Sarah's condition had improved a lot. She went to the stream to fetch water and check the traps, but unfortunately, they hadn't caught anything yet. They were in dire need of protein and a decent meal, but despite the island's abundance, they were living like paupers. The grilled lizard and fish soup from the start were their best meals. Now, they lay in the shelter, starving. By day 12, they decided to move to the beach to shorten the walk on evacuation day. They set up 3 traps, but none worked. If they had caught anything, they wouldn't have to leave so soon. They walked along the stream, starting their journey to the evacuation point 2 days early. It was the first time I saw them do this. When they reached the beach, they began fishing. The waves were huge, making it difficult to catch fish. They cast their lines thousands of times without catching a single fish, much harder than the first day. They kept trying, considering the big waves and fewer fish. They ventured deeper, but still caught nothing. Their efforts were in vain. Not a single fish was caught. On the 13th day, Frank checked the traps again, hoping to find some food. One of the stone traps had been triggered. When he opened it, he found many ants had already gotten to a mouse. Frank watched the mouse. Feeling very upset, he complained about the ants' lack of ethics, taking others' hard-earned food. In the evening, it started raining heavily again. They caught a bug in the shelter, which might provide some protein. At night, the shelter was filled with whispers, making it impossible to sleep. On the 14th day, the evacuation day, despite all the hardships, they were happy because they would soon get the $100,000 prize. They decided to head to the evacuation point in the rain. After walking for several hours, they finally reached the evacuation point and successfully completed the challenge. Surviving for 14 days, they won the $100,000 prize, even though it felt like an easy win. Where will they challenge next? Stay tuned for the next episode.
The crab, which weighs a few pounds, could be worth $100,000 and the most mountain crabs I've ever seen. You never thought true wilderness survival could work so well. The crabs can't stop eating, and bananas and pomegranates for fruit. Weave fish cages to catch river fish, chop off the head and eat the guts. It's a pretty explosive way to eat in the whole wilderness world. This female lead Olly, 35-year-old divorced with 3 kids. She's a returning contestant from 21 days of original survival. The first day of the challenge, she had a sudden stomachache when she was fetching water. I got caught in the water, being despised by his teammates. Although she said she only pulled a little, there's not so much in an iron pot, but it all led to her dropping out. This time she returned to the challenge, vowed not to make the same mistake. I wouldn't tell my teammates if I had another leak. This time the hero Andy, he's a handsome ex-soldier. The photos sent to the show crew were really handsome. Personal hobbies are also very many. A handsome, rich man with no problem. Divorced young woman Olly is very much looking forward to living with this handsome man. I didn't know when she saw her partner. I realized it was a big loss. The promised rich and handsome turned out to be an old man. Andy says, the photos sent to the show were only taken about 18 years ago. Not very long, and not much has changed. At least they're all men. The show felt cheated, too. Ask him to send some new photos. He had to find photos taken in the past 2 years to make up for it. Olly couldn't go on and finish the game. There's an old man in a divorce stall. How would they survive in the wild? Andy brought a machete. Olly brought a fire stick. Even if she doesn't, the show will also provide fire sticks. Since she's got a fire stick, the show had to give them an iron pot. They need to walk 5 kilometers to a desert island off the coast to survive. The desert island of Tobago is thick with jungle. It's full of cute blood-sucking mosquitoes and a bunch of ants to get you on fire. What rainstorms and flash floods. At best, it sets the mood and opening day. They walked in the jungle. There are no roads. Andy was in the army. It's a decent environment for him. Olly behind me is supposed to be the hardest. Divorced young woman with 3 children. Crocodiles would have nightmares. Andy also prepared for the worst. The wet conditions of the jungle made Olly feel very uncomfortable. Here they see fresh water. The water comes down from the mountains. Andy just picked it up and drank it. I'm not afraid of Olly pooping upstream, because Olly's right behind you. They put a little in an iron pan. Olly thinks you have to boil it anyway. She doesn't want to get loose again. Andy was concerned about Olly's stomach upset, so he had to boil the water for her as soon as possible. But it's very humid. He wasn't sure if he'd make a fire on the first day. They see a bigger stream here, decided to build a shelter here. They picked an open spot. There is no fear of flooding, and there are enough resources to build shelters for them. With the plan in place, Andy cut down bamboo and began to build the shelter. Olly is in charge of finding tinder for the fire. Banana leaves look good, but it feels very wet to the touch. Andy's cutting bamboo like crazy. In front of Olly, fully show the charm of the old and strong. Olly thought to make a floor first. Even if the shelter is not built, they can also sleep on bamboo. Olly's planning a shelter for Andy. Nearby plant and leaves can be used as a roof. Make the bed first and sleep better at night. Soon they had the shelter set up. Although it looks very simple, but I can barely live. The next thing Olly wanted was to make a good fire. She can't stand the mosquitoes here, but in a humid environment, making a fire is 10 times harder than usual. Olly's holding the bottle and making fun of everything. It's hard to guess where some of the flames are. It went out before I blew it. Andy shook his head and shook it away. Olly said he had never tried to be in the wild without a fire. Either Andy gets the fire going today, otherwise, Olly's gonna have to set Andy on fire. Andy's feeling a lot of pressure right now. Olly, go find some dry tinder. Without a fire, I'm sure I'll be mummified by mosquitoes tonight. While she was collecting wood, bitten by ants 1,000 times a second. Andy didn't know what to do, did he? Olly's already been tortured and crying anyway. They're here for 21 days. It's only day 1. It was a really bad start for her. Last 2 challengers. To survive here on a desert island. We got off to a good start. How can it be so bad for them? Andy's been working hard on the fire, but it never worked out. Hit a few flames at a time. Can't succeed. It's not Andy. No, looks like it's really damp in here. Olly couldn't be of any help while he was being tormented by mosquitoes. Time comes tonight. Mosquitoes smell meat. Go wild. Just an hour. Olly has been attacked thousands of times by mosquitoes. It didn't affect Andy holding Olly at all. Time to the next day. Fat was out for a walk this morning. They finally got up, too. Andy's goal today is to perfect the shelter and fire. Start by fixing the roof of the shelter. Andy decided to seal off the shelters. There will be fewer mosquitoes at night, but the shelter that was created, keep out the rain at best. At night, they bite to death just the same. You can't boil water without fire. Olly had to simply filter the mountain water. I hope you don't have diarrhea. They have perfected the shelter in no time. The next most important task is the fire. It's all in Andy's hands. He scraped the bamboo scraps for tinder. It's like scraping on the bamboo. Get tinder and start a fire again. This time he succeeded in lighting the fire. With the fire, they can do a lot of things. At least you can boil water and cook food. It has certain anti-mosquito effect at night. Olly's confidence began to return. Fire is what keeps them alive here. There was some comfort in seeing the fire. Andy smiled a little more, because he knows how hard this fire is. But this is just the beginning of survival in the wilderness. If you want to have a good life here, they still have a lot of work to do. The sky suddenly began to change. That's faster than a girlfriend changing faces. It's raining heavily tonight. Andy sleeps in the shelter with Olly in his arms. They had a hard time making the fire. Got wet again in a heavy rain. In its own and humid environment, it rained heavily again. It's like hiding in a snowy mountain with an extra fridge to cover it up. It's not so cold. It was incredibly cold. Time came to the 3rd day. Get up in the morning. The fire had turned into a puddle. Shelters have been destroyed beyond measure. It was raining all night. Today they're starting to build shelters again. Andy thinks the plant and leaves are too fragile. He wants to build a strong shelter. I want to build a shelter out of bamboo. Only in this way can it not be damaged by the rainstorm. Olly, however, was different. She thinks it's just a matter of fixing the leak. Andy was stunned when he heard that. Olly doesn't just like diarrhea. That's how you do things. She felt that her energy was running out. She didn't even run the shelter. She didn't start the fire. What kind of energy she's expending? Andy did see that. This bitch wants to win by starving. Andy couldn't care less. I had to set to work by myself. He hollowed out the bamboo tube and put it over the shelter like this. The water will flow down. The shelter was renovated in no time. Hopefully, this will prevent the storm's crit damage. Andy had a great idea. Bamboo has very good drainage effect. The next thing is to find a way to start a fire. There are many bamboo tubes here, but it's very wet. Andy collects some small pieces of wood. Move it back to the shelter. Let dry, and you can burn it at any time. The new shelter can keep out the rain. A fire can also be burned inside. Andy plans to go to the river to look for some food. It's a tough place to live. I don't make it to day 21 without food. He searched along the river. Finally, he found many banana trees here, and there are a lot of ripe bananas. These bananas will last them for several days. Andy comes back with the banana. Olly was excited to fly. Olly with the banana. Let's just say Andy is the person she loves the most. Decided to reward him tonight. They were flaunting a ton of bananas bananas in no time. I had a lot of bananas today. It feels really good to be full. They returned to the shelter and began to build a fire. The shelter was well stocked with firewood. Tinder's ready, too. Sparks lead to lightning in shelters. You want to die after one operation. I managed to get some small flames. I blew it out by mistake. Andy thinks the environment here is too humid. Freshly scraped wood chips soon become wet. What if Olly keeps saying there's no fire? Andy tried to put something in her mouth to put out the fire. No fire had to hold Olly to sleep at night. A night without rain. Olly was so tormented by mosquitoes that he couldn't sleep. No matter what, Andy is the man behind her. Time came to the 4th day. Olly was bitten all over last night. It's very cold at night without a fire. She needs to complete the shelter. Prepare to seal the shelter with leaves. Andy went back to the stream to find food, but he felt the fire was the priority. Without fire, Olly's not going to be here for much longer. Food not found. He had to collect some wood here. It's better than going home empty-handed. Andy scavenged wood everywhere. Put the wood in the sun to dry. These bamboo shells are also good for building fires. Dry it for later use. Sun should set in 3 hours. He went back to see if Olly had any diarrhea on his bed. By now, Olly had built a door. A door like this will keep out a little wind at night. Let's just say she made a little contribution. Andy thinks Olly is doing a great job. I feel very pleased. Building a fire is still Andy's biggest challenge. We've got 2 hours left before dark. Andy began to try to make fire again. The wood was dried in the sun. I hope we can start a fire. Just 2 of those. So he lit a fire. I didn't think it would be so easy this time. A fire makes it warmer to sleep at night. But he wasn't happy for long. The fire went out. Andy had to start the fire again. I mean, he's gonna lose his mind right now. Time came to the 5th day. Building a fire has made him very hopeful. He needs to spend time looking for food every day. He's sitting on a rock going crazy when he can't find any food. Just open the 3rd eye. He can see where the food is. Andy opened the eyes of heaven and began to search. I saw a naked woman knitting. Olly is going to weave a fish cage. Went to the stream to catch some fish. I didn't know she had that skill. I really underestimated her hands-on skills. The sky began to turn bad again. Andy didn't find any food. I was going to bring her a log. This wood looks very fat. It is rich in turpentine. It's a good material for a fire. This wood definitely burns well. Carry it back for Olly to enjoy. Back at the shelter, he began to try again to make fire. Start with a layer of wood shavings for tinder. Put it all in the iron pan. Then try to make a fire. Sure enough, he soon lit it up. He took the fire into the shelter. Olly came back with the firewood. They were very excited to be living again. When you have fire, you have everything. The happiest, of course, was Olly. She thinks she'll sleep well tonight. Soon the sky began to rain heavily. Good thing they perfected the shelter. Even if it's raining hard outside, it doesn't matter that they're in the shelter. Gradually, they started to get on track. The time came to the 7th day. After solving the fire problem, they have to think about food. Protein supplementation becomes their top priority. They came to the neighborhood and began to explore. A big crab was found here. They catch crabs with sticks. Such a big mountain crab. Enough to feed them until they're stuffed. They boiled the crabs in an iron pot. This crab soup just smells good. Been here a long time. Finally, you can eat meat. Protein is what they need most right now. Everyone ate very delicious. The crab meal gave them a great deal of confidence and let them eat very satisfied. Although the environment here is very bad, I really admire their positive attitude towards survival. The time came to the 9th day. They are going to catch crabs again today. It's been raining lately, but their shelter was very dry. Getting protein is still their top priority. They returned to the spot where the crab had been found. I'm gonna try my luck here. Suddenly, Olly slipped and fell. Well, that's just bad luck opening the fucking door and getting home. Olly sat on the ground in pain. Andy didn't know what to do, did he? Olly didn't dare move around. I'm afraid I won't be able to poop after I sprain my ass. She just wanted to go back and lie down. It looks like a pretty painful fall. Come out happy. Go back crying. Andy helped Olly walk back slowly. Then the doctor came to examine her waist. After a check, the doctor said a little more delay would have healed it. It's just Olly's psychology. Now there's a reason to lie down until the end. Andy's plans to eat crab today are going to fall through. At this point, Olly already had the idea of quitting, and Andy's out in the rain collecting wood. He paid a lot for it. It rains here almost every day. Olly was so sick in the shelter that he was about to fly. Can't sleep no matter what. Her desire to quit grew stronger and stronger. The time came to the 10th day. Olly still feels a pain in her back. Can't do anything right now. Don't want to do anything but poop. The thought of all the kids at home she had to take care of. She was desperate to quit. Finally, she decided to quit, even though the show says your back's fine and you can continue the challenge. But Olly didn't want to stay. Andy shook his head. I see my teammates are determined to leave. He was also very helpless. In the end, The show couldn't persuade her. She chose to withdraw from the competition. Andy feels like the last 10 days. I took care of her for nothing. Olly thinks Andy's a good guy. A little older, though. But if he makes it to 21 days and gets the $100,000 reward, she's willing to spend it with Andy. It's just that she's got back pain and wants to go back. Olly's heart is still here to challenge with Andy, so Olly's offer to spend the winnings with Andy isn't too much of a stretch. Sad to see Olly go. Andy stays to continue the game. Looks very lonely. He's actually over the worst of it. The rest of the day, he just had to forage for food. Andy is trying to adjust his mood. Put yourself in the right frame of mind to complete the challenge. It rains here almost every day. Andy's only consolation was that the shelter didn't leak. When it rains, he can't go out to work. I had to hide in the shelter and do nothing. Time came to the 11th day. He decided to put the fish cage made by Olly into the water. The stream is very big now. We don't talk about fish. Chances are the fish cage won't be found the next day. Andy used crab scraps as bait. After you put it away, just tie it up with a rope. Time came to day 12. Andy was going to check the fish cage first thing this morning. The river rises very quickly. It's a little dangerous to even try to walk there. He hoped to catch some fish to eat. Take a look at the fish cage. I did find a fish. This fish is not big, but it was enough to make Andy feel confident. Andy cut off the head of the fish. Squeeze all the supplements in the fish's belly into your mouth and eat them. It would be nice to add some hot sauce, the rest of the head, and eat it as a sashimi. Andy minced the fish. I'm going to put them in the cage and catch more fish. This kind of catching fish, eating fish shit and throwing fish away. It's very explosive in the whole wilderness world. Andy had no intention of making a fire that night, but it feels very cold. Had to use a backpack as a cover. Time came to day 13. 2 pigs are having breakfast. Andy sat down on the floor and went back to sleep. Can't sleep at night without a woman. Very sleepy during the day. The water is rising very fast. This will make it harder to catch fish. He stood here not sure if the fish cage was still there. I don't know if I caught a fish. I know his hair is the same all the time. Andy walked in the water with a walking stick. One mistake and you'll fall into the water and drink tons of water. A closer look reveals that the fish cage is missing. It was bound to the bamboo. Not only lost the fish cage, I lost a fish. I've lost my only fishing tools. Even if I get the bonus, I can't face Olly. The time came to the 14th day. Andy looks for a fish cage by the river every day. I hope I can get Olly's fish cage back. He found some coconut shells here, but no other coconuts were found. He returned to the spot where he had found the banana, but the banana has just bloomed and is not edible. Andy continues to explore nearby. I was surprised to see a pomegranate tree by the river. There are so many pomegranates growing on it. Andy picked some to fill his stomach. Pomegranate is very sweet. How much you enjoy eating and how much you embarrass yourself pooping. Andy is very adaptable, but a person always feels so boring. In the evening, the sky began to rain heavily again. Bamboo roofs are very practical. There's no fear of getting wet in there. I'm gonna have to eat guava for dinner tonight. The time came to day 15. Andy explores the jungle every day. The mud on the ground is like stepping on dog shit. The flood is getting bigger and bigger. A few more days of rain and flash floods are likely. The river prevented him from exploring further. Andy needs to maintain his shelter every day. The leaves that had been covered on the first day were beginning to wither. It's gonna leak if we don't fix it. He wished very much that Olly could be here working with him, but Olly just wants to split the prize money with him. I don't want to be in trouble with Andy. The time came to day 16. Andy sees some crab holes. He's going to dig up the crab. The crab holes are hollowed out, but there were no crabs to be found. Andy's exploring the neighborhood looking for protein. Here's hoping to find a spicy stick or a lizard. The daily hunger made him very tired. Now I'm just trying to get as much food as I can to survive. All I can think about is eating. The water level began to drop. He's going to check that the bananas are ripe. You have to cross the river every time, as hard as it is, but just finding food to eat is good. The banana has grown a little bit, but it's not mature. The time came to day 18. Now Andy was very tired. He looked for some worms on the ground. Protein needs to be replenished to get out of here. It was hard to find a small earthworm, even with dirty hands. He couldn't care less. Put the worm straight in your mouth. This is not enough to eat. After he had eaten, he began to explore the neighborhood again. Maybe it's real fatigue. Andy sat feebly on the ground. Perhaps even more terrible than hunger is loneliness. Been here for so long. He's actually starting to miss Mom. I felt very sad because I had not called my mother for a long time. Andy is suffering emotionally. It's actually hunger. When you're full, it releases dopamine and makes you feel happy. I can't sleep every night. The time came to day 19. Andy comes to the shore every day to check the water. The river will rise whenever it rains. Now Andy finds it very difficult. I didn't know survival in the wilderness would be so hard. Scarcity is not just hunger, and very lonely. Even if I could find something to eat here every day, I wouldn't be so bored. Andy just sat on the floor and felt bad. The main thing is a waste of time. Time came to the 20th day. I sleep until I get up in the sun. Wake up and just stand here and drink the northwest wind. There is no food to eat every day. All I can do is drink water. No fire. Water can only be drunk raw. You'll get a little more bacteria. You'll feel full after drinking. Just sit here and freak out. He wanted Olly to have diarrhea every day. Wait until the sun comes up. He wants to get some sun to replenish his energy. But it was very difficult to walk just a few steps. The sun shone on him, just charging him up. At this moment, I feel like Deja is pointing his butt at me. This is the moment I believe that light and farts exist together. Time came to day 21. Today is evacuation day. Just make it to the extraction point. You get a $100,000 prize. I thought about Olly every day for the first 20 days. Only today I didn't think about her. He drank a pot of water before setting off. We're ready to go. Even if the road is difficult, but with a $100,000 bonus. Climb to the extraction point. Eventually, he made it to the beach. I really admire Andy's adaptability. Don't give up easily when encountering difficulties. It's about constantly changing yourself to adapt to the environment. He deserves the $100,000. So who else is going to be here next time? Look forward to an update in the next video.
In the wild, if you come across this type of wild fruit, don't miss it because it could be worth $100,000. This guy found the fruit and, with 3 women, survived the African wilderness, bagging a $100,000 prize. This challenge is set in the African wilderness. Meet our first participant, Jenny. She's 35 and admitted she was terrified upon arrival. Honestly, her appearance scared me too. The second participant is Heather, also a 35-year-old woman. She looks somewhat decent. The third participant is Lauren. She's a 41-year-old woman and looks quite terrifying. The fourth participant is Robin, a 33-year-old young man. Is he out of his mind? Surviving in the wild with 3 women? Director, this could be deadly. This is the African savannah. It's packed with scary wild beasts, but these 3 women are even more frightening than lions and wild dogs. 3 women and a good-looking guy trying to survive. Even the crocs would be terrified. When we arrived, the women began shedding their clothes. Their grinning faces made me nervous. Robin, unaware of the impending danger, hopefully won't end up as a dried-up corpse. Jenny and Heather met first. Besides her name, Jenny has no redeeming qualities. Heather, though, is quite the looker with her fair skin and pretty face. When Lauren showed up, they were both stunned, not knowing it was a 3-person contest. I don't mind more women, but the way they all stare at me is a real issue. My grandma's leg, even my hands ache from all the pixelating. The 3 women were happily chatting about not needing a man to conquer the African wilderness, but when Robin showed up, their eyes were glued to him, especially Jenny, who looked ready to pounce. Only Heather seemed bashful. Jenny was the happiest, and even Lauren couldn't hide her excitement. Robin didn't realize how dangerous it was. He assumed it was a civilized setup and no one would act crazy. He never imagined there'd be 3 women, making it his shining moment. I've seen 2 guys and a girl make it, but 3 girls and 1 guy is a first. Robin must have some serious connections or be the director's kid. The show gave them a fire starter and a pot, which is a huge help. This pot is the biggest and newest I've ever seen. Robin came with a slingshot for hunting, Lauren with a primitive axe, Heather with fishing gear, and Jenny with a machete. The tools are all set, but can Jenny stay quiet? It's still daylight, keep your thoughts clean. Once they picked their spot, they began hiking. They chatted and laughed the whole way, enjoying themselves. They had to hike 7 kilometers to the river where they'd set up their shelter. On the first day, despite the heat, they were mostly immersed in the joy of chatting. Lauren, who has biochemical training, knows how to identify plants and gather wild food. She loves hiking and joined the show for her passion for the outdoors. Even if she's not the prettiest, she's here. The thorny path made walking painful. But this pain was nothing for Jenny. She's used to going barefoot in Hawaii and loves chasing thrills in the mountains and sea. Hunting is her forte. She's tougher than most guys. Jenny's strong, though she's a bit dark and not very attractive. But at least she's a woman. The path was covered with leaves, possibly hiding snakes, so they walked very slowly. Heather's a real gem. She loves the outdoors and does more advanced stuff than Jenny and Lauren. Robin also enjoys going to snowy mountains, similar to Heather's hobbies. I get it now, Robin's target must be Heather. Jenny handles the hunting and helping out, while Lauren focuses on foraging. After they eat, it's Heather's time to shine. They trekked for hours without getting there, but they did find and gather lots of wild fruits along the way. After collecting the fruits, they kept moving and soon arrived at a river with a vast stretch of sandy soil. They spotted plenty of potential meals scurrying about, but all they had was a slingshot. A bow and arrow would have been much better. But with a river that big, fishing should pay off. Heather's main worry wasn't the water source. He was more concerned about the nearby carnivores, so they had to quickly find a safe spot for their shelter. Once they did, they got to work building it. Everyone got to work and the girls were super proactive. Unlike those who try to win by slacking off, this group is really capable. If food isn't an issue, they can definitely last until the 21st day. Lauren quickly got the fire going. She began boiling water. Their shelter looks great and should be safe at night. After a day's work, they began to rest. At around 7, Jenny got up for a drink and felt instantly refreshed. The night scenes were dull and the video quality was bad. To save your data, we skipped that part for you. It's now day 2. The girls had a blast last night, each one as fierce as a tiger. They woke up and drank a pot of water for breakfast, still full from the night before. Drinking water was almost unnecessary. After breakfast, they went to the river to fish. Heather felt she didn't perform well enough last night. I had no clue what she meant. They barely drink water now. Heather wanted to string a line across the river, with hooks in the middle to catch fish. Yesterday, they collected a lot of wild fruits and planned to use the bugs inside as bait. They squeezed out the bugs. I really admire their restraint in not taking a bite. After baiting the hooks, they strung them across the river. They seemed to set up just 4 hooks, each a different length, and use stones to weigh down the line. Hoping to catch some big fish, Robin and Lauren, with no other plans, went into the woods to explore, to see if they could hunt anything. They didn't spot a single bird. The bugs on the ground were sun-dried and pitch black. The place seemed eerily quiet. They started turning over stones and found some worms, which are great for sashimi or fishing. They kept flipping stones and found some strange bugs, which she took back for Jenny to eat. A few hours later, Heather and the gang checked the fishing traps, but they came up empty. Jenny's smile faded without any fish. She was a bit worried that Robin wouldn't get enough protein to see the next day's sun. The sun here was scorching, so Heather planned to make a sun hat. Robin explored for so long today and only caught a few bugs, not enough to replenish the energy spent. After returning to the shelter, they fried the bugs on the pot lid. Wouldn't they be better for fishing? Jenny returned and was thrilled to see so many bugs. And she was thrilled. Heather kept fishing by the shore, clearly unfazed by the sun. After a day of hunger, they all looked worn out. They munched on bugs and took a break in the shelter. Heather kept fishing, showing her perseverance, but returned empty-handed after a few hours. The bugs were still squirming on the pot lid. Do they even check if the charcoal is hot? By 6 in the evening, the bugs were still the same, but Robin kept munching away. How could they even stomach it? It must be no different from... Heather found the bugs adorable and tasty, munching on them one by one. He couldn't be happy without catching any fish. After dinner, they prepared to sleep. It was now the 3rd day. They didn't sleep well last night. Heather was thinking about fishing first thing in the morning. While crafting the fishing rod, he was all smiles. This young master clearly has a passion for fishing. Even Jenny, the hunting expert, found fishing tough. He had to get creative. Once the rod was ready, Heather was eager to fish, while Robin prepped for hunting. The nearby plump pig seemed so carefree. Why didn't they try to catch one for food? The sun was scorching, but Robin's woven shoes made walking easier. Guinea fowls were all over the place. Why didn't he use his slingshot? He said he was going hunting but just lay there enjoying the view. Was he just messing with the guinea fowls? Meanwhile, Heather and Jenny kept struggling to fish. It's great to have a sister to spoil you. They'd been waiting forever without catching any fish, and Jenny was losing hope. This place is really something else. She was throwing stones for them under the scorching sun. At least they should catch a few. Even though Jenny was dark and ugly, she had a kind heart. From morning until after 4 in the afternoon, they had been fishing. Jenny was getting sunburned. When Heather saw Jenny leave, he couldn't convince her to stay. Fishing was okay, but Jenny wasn't up for getting sunburned. Heather's fishing obsession was really strong. Robin was still enjoying the view. He believed hunting required patience. Suddenly, he saw a small fish and wanted to catch it, but he moved too quickly. Finding a small fish in this pile of grass was too difficult. Night fell. A lion appeared near the shelter. Jenny didn't know what it was. They all became alert. The lion was close, eyeing them intently. They waited nervously to see who'd step out for a bathroom break. Heather distinctly heard it roar. They were too scared to sleep. It was now the 4th day. Robin went out early to collect wood. He saw many footprints on the ground. No human could make prints that deep. This creature must have been really heavy. Robin figured it was the same one from last night. He was collecting wood here. Firewood was essential every night to keep wild animals away. Lauren and Jenny were searching for bugs in the jungle. Jenny ditched fishing and joined the bug hunt. In the African wilderness, protein is all around. They've resorted to eating bugs. Come on, guys, set up some hunting traps and catch something to eat, please. Seth's been trying his luck at different spots along the river, but he hasn't caught a single fish. Are there even any fish in there? Seth always thought he was great at fishing, but coming here, he's been completely outmatched by the African fish. After gathering wood, Robin plans to go out and set traps. He'll use bugs as bait to hunt for some protein. With a stone slab and a stick, you can make a trap. This forward trap is the most common and usually only catches small mice. Traps aren't guaranteed to catch prey, but without them, you won't get anything. On day 5, Lauren joins the fishing team. Seth's skin is now as dark as charcoal. Starving, he desperately hopes to catch a fish to eat. In the end, he didn't catch any fish and the fishing line broke. Seth is now in a daze, having lost all hope. He just sits there, hoping for a fish to bite. Lauren heads back to the shelter and updates the team on Seth's situation, thinking he's become obsessed with fishing. Seth hasn't caught a single fish, and the cameraman's at risk of sunburn on the shore. Jenny feels bad for Seth. She hopes Seth doesn't stress too much. He could take a nap and try fishing again later. Seth is dog-tired by the river. While his teammates nap in the shelter, Seth feels it's on him to catch fish and blames himself if he fails. Sometimes, being too responsible isn't a good thing. It's better to be a bit carefree. Seth keeps hoping for a miracle. Even if he's about to fall asleep, he keeps fishing. He keeps changing fishing spots but only catches tiny fish, though he seems foolish. His teammates aren't any brighter, just banging rocks together. Seth didn't come back until evening. They now realize the problem is serious. They have no food. Robin thinks they need a family meeting to redistribute everyone's tasks. After several days of hunger, they're all exhausted and can't muster the energy to do anything. Seth thinks he's been fishing non-stop and helping the team a lot. Jenny disagrees right away. Sure, you haven't caught any fish, but claiming you've done more than us? No way. Seth feels embarrassed. Jenny also criticizes him for wasting the whole day fishing. Lauren knew everyone was tired and needed protein. If Heather didn't fish, staying here to sleep would be pointless. If they could order takeout, I bet everyone would want to lie in the shelter and sleep for 21 days. The family meeting yielded no results, but at least there was no conflict. On the 6th day, Lauren found 2 frogs for Heather to use as bait. I really admire her. She's tirelessly working for food. It's better than those past contestants who just stayed hungry. She could leave the hook and do other tasks instead of waiting for a bite. It'd be smarter to use the time for other tasks. Robin went to check the hunting traps which had been triggered, but they hadn't caught anything. Robin felt hungry and dizzy, so they had to reset the traps. Jenny found the challenge too difficult, especially getting food. They realized it was hard to keep going without food here. Robin suggested moving to another location. On the 7th day, they started discussing it early in the morning. Although it was comfortable living here, they couldn't get any food, maybe due to bad luck. They discussed where to move. Jenny picked a spot on the map, and everyone agreed. They decided to move the next day and make one last effort to gather food before leaving. Lauren wanted a good meal before they left, so Heather went fishing. Jenny boiled water in the shelter and prepared ropes for the move. Heather finally got a bite and caught a small fish. She was so happy she could almost fly. Jenny was happy for her too. If Heather hadn't caught a fish, she might have gone crazy. Heather brought the fish back to the shelter. After waiting 7 days, catching this small fish felt like fulfilling a wish. Around 5 in the afternoon, they went to gather wood for cooking the fish and unexpectedly found a small mouse. The running protein made the girls drool. They chased the mouse and finally killed it with Jenny's big knife. The mouse never expected to die at the hands of these women. They were lucky today, at least they caught some protein to eat. Although the fish was small, everyone was happy about it. After 10 days of drying, they finally got a bit of meat, and everyone got a piece. Don't underestimate this bite of meat. It will trigger stomach acid, making them feel even hungrier within an hour. Next was Jenny's mouse, which they roasted directly over the fire. It only took a few minutes to cook. Jenny took a bite. It tasted like beef jerky. Having 2 meat meals today was another milestone in their survival journey. It was a significant breakthrough. On the 8th day, it was moving day. They packed up all their tools and set off. They ventured to the other side of the path, hoping the resources there would be plentiful. Everyone was excited about the new location. It was a gamble, but with nothing to lose, they were fearless. They grabbed their belongings and set off. Lauren was most worried about encountering large animals. Danger was everywhere, and this move would surely drain their energy. After 2 hours of walking, they reached a thicker part of the jungle. This hike wasn't as fun as the first day. The path ahead was full of unknown trees. After 3 hours, they reached a dry riverbed with no water in sight. Robin felt unlucky. After 4 hours, the grass was almost dry, and Heather started to panic. Moving might have been a bad decision. They found a baobab tree, which could be a food source. Heather hoped to find baobab fruit and was already imagining its taste. They searched everywhere. Unfortunately, they came up empty-handed. Jenny then spotted a plant whose leaf direction hinted at nearby water. Sure enough, they found a water source nearby. The water here was clearer and cleaner, giving Lauren hope. The area was more open, making it a good spot for a shelter. With a plan in place, they got to work right away. Everyone tirelessly contributed to the team effort. Robin was thrilled to see the girls working so hard. He was thrilled. They lit a fire and began boiling water. Around 1 a.m., the weather suddenly shifted. They gathered around the fire, shivering. It was clear they wouldn't sleep much. In the morning, they felt even weaker. The night before had been freezing. Heather mentioned they needed to upgrade the shelter for better sleep. They planned to finish the shelter's insulation today. July is winter in Zambia, so they decided to build a bed off the ground. At least this way, they would feel much warmer. They used wood for the frame and laid bamboo on top. Then they layered dry grass on top. At the same time, they constructed a stone wall to reflect heat onto the bed. This made it a lot warmer, and Heather was thrilled with the new shelter. Sleeping would be much cozier now. At night, they slept together like this, no longer huddling around the fire. African nights were really too cold. Lions and elephants were everywhere nearby, and they were too scared to sleep. The sounds of predators hunting were terrifying. By the 10th day, Lauren was most worried about lions. The nights were not only cold but also filled with the anxiety of predators. After 2 sleepless nights, he was barely holding on. Lying on the hard ground at night was unbearable. Robin chose to gather sand to make a softer sleeping area, hoping it would be more comfortable. Lauren kept gathering wood, feeling sore and as if something was pounding on his chest. Without protein intake, he could only rest more. Heather was hunting in the west when she spotted a big tadpole in the water. She wanted to catch them, but they were too fast and tricky to grab. Jenny was chopping down palm trees to weave tools from the leaves for catching tadpoles. I had no idea she could do that. She quickly wove a device, and Heather took it to the stream to catch tadpoles. Despite the water being full of small fish and tadpoles, she couldn't catch a single one. The tadpoles she scooped up escaped through the holes. She kept trying and finally caught one. Gradually, she mastered it, catching tadpoles and small fish. Heather grew increasingly obsessed with fishing. She hoped her efforts would secure food for the team. They roasted the tadpoles and ate them directly. Every night was a struggle. The temperature swings between day and night in Africa were extreme, and they had to tough it out to finish the competition. By day 11, they'd gripe about the previous night's cold every morning, knowing many more lay ahead. Their shelter wasn't very effective. Their confidence was slowly fading. In addition to gathering wood daily, they had to go out for bathroom breaks. Lauren felt dizzy while working. He realized it was best to limit bathroom trips to 3 times a day without food. Back at the shelter, he informed Jenny about his state, mentioning he felt faint while walking. Without protein soon, he might need his teammates to carry him out. The hunger and cold were brutal. Lauren, don't cry. You're the one who uses the bathroom the most. Even Robin can't handle going a few times a day. Skipping a trip won't make you any less hungry. He began considering quitting, and his teammates were really worried about him. Robin respected his choice. If you feel you can't hold on, don't be embarrassed to quit. Even if you leave the competition, you haven't lost in my eyes. You just didn't win the $100,000 prize. Thinking about it makes you cry, and it's heartbreaking. We came here to survive for the prize money. Who cares about winning or losing? In the end, Lauren called the show crew, saying she felt chest tightness and shortness of breath. Plus, she was malnourished and very cold at night. She said a lot, and the show crew just wanted to hear her say she was leaving. But she hadn't decided to leave yet. Finally, Lauren decided to quit the competition. One less teammate means one less mouth to feed. Lauren didn't lose. She just didn't win the prize in a prize-winning competition. She got sunburned and starved for 10 days. In the end, she got nothing. Jenny is the strongest in the team. Even after 10 days of hunger, she's still in good shape. Alright, stop crying. Heather has gone from a hot lady to looking like an old woman. Despite the big change in her face, she still uses charcoal to draw her eyebrows every day. Heather plans to make weapons for hunting. It's the 12th day. He woke up feeling okay and planned to make some traps to hunt larger animals. After getting up, they scouted the area, planning to set traps for guinea fowl. The traps were simple. Anyway, Heather was already thinking about how to cook the guinea fowl. After setting the traps, they used tadpole meat as bait. On the 13th day, they caught many grasshoppers in a small puddle. They used the grasshoppers as bait. Heather checked the traps and saw the bait was gone, but the traps hadn't triggered. There must have been animals here. He put new bait in, hoping to catch something. By the 15th day, they were catching tadpoles daily. Slowly, they nearly caught all of them. Tadpoles were their sole protein source, but they overfished the water, leaving no tadpoles or small fish. Jenny was worried about the food shortage. Robin also felt the resources were scarce. On the 17th day, While exploring, the girls found a small snake. The snake ended up dead at the hands of the two ladies. It resembled a small python, boosting their confidence. They made jerky out of it using the iron pot. They were very happy eating it. On the 18th day, Robin was picking up some small stones in the west. The end was near. He remembered his slingshot and planned to hunt with it. He saw a lizard on the rocks. He aimed and shot, hitting it, but couldn't find the lizard afterward. There was no evidence. You could say he hit a tiger, but now Robin felt useless, unable to bring any food to the team. The two girls took good care of him every day. He really wanted to bring back some protein for them. It was now the 20th day. Tomorrow was evacuation day, and despite their hunger, they were happy. While gathering wood, Heather saw a guinea fowl. He called his teammates to hunt it, but the bird flew off before they got close, dashing their feast dreams again. Jenny unexpectedly found a baobab tree here. The best part was, it had lots of baobab fruit. She was thrilled to have a good meal before evacuation. These baobab fruits are rich in starch and can be eaten as a meal. They tasted very sweet and delicious, one of the favorite foods for survivalists. In tough times, these fruits can be lifesavers. They enjoyed the baobab meal and felt content. With the evacuation tomorrow, they were even happier. It was now the 21st day, the evacuation day. If they successfully evacuated, they would win the $100,000 prize. Heather had already planned how to spend the money last night. After getting ready, they set off, needing to walk 10 kilometers. No matter how hard the journey, they were determined to reach the evacuation point for the $100,000 prize. And they did it. So, who will take on the challenge next time? Stay tuned for the next episode.